Of course, let's see. As we start to get a little further out, Atlanta has to become. I moved here in September of '93, and by '95, So Def was like everywhere. Like they were everywhere, and a lot of people would come to Atlanta because of what Jermaine Dupri was doing here. Like he was, so that was another pivotal
Mhm.
mark where the South started to feel itself and find itself for hip hop. I mean, because you still had other great groups, because that's when you started seeing Tennessee blowing. You started
Mhm.
seeing Mississippi blowing because you had cats like David Banner and all of those dudes starting to like bubble, and you would see them
Crucial
in different
conflict and
areas.
all them. Yeah.
Yeah, and not taking anything away, because I know there are areas that are missing, because Common was already around. Like you started seeing like these stellar artists in different areas of the world, and I could tell you when that happened. Now this is gonna sound weird. Now when I was on Broadway in Houston, I was shopping for a bunch of groups, and I wanted to look outside of New York. And I kind of fell onto a couple of New York acts, because I was there. So Adolf and LOD and all of them, they that was all there. However, I wanted to go outside of this area. One of the places that I went was the Bay Area, because they had this up and coming crew called the Hieroglyphics, and
Mm.
Hieroglyphics was like, yo, when I looked at these kids, I was just like, yo, this is that whole native tongue movement
Right,
all
right,
over
right.
again for the West Coast. And don't get me wrong, it was its own thing. They had their own flows, they had their own style, but it reminded me so much of the
Hmm.
native tongue movement that I was just like, yo, these kids are phenomenal. So I went right away to trying to sign them. And Sophia Chang from Jive got wind and cut me off. So Domino got approached by me, and then shortly thereafter by her, and they ended up picking up Casual. They ended up picking up Souls of Mischief. Dell had ended up getting picked up, and then there was another group um, which reminded me a lot of Fuji's that I wanted to sign. It was a girl and two guys, and they were dope. And I can't, their names escapes me, but they were super, super dope, and I wanted all of them. And and that had to be 92, 93, 92, 93, around that same time. And then Sophia Chang and Jive ended up putting Souls of Mischief out in 93, I believe it was.
Hmm.
Um, and so that whole movement in the Bay, I thought was really dope. So that era between 91 and 93 was very pivotal, because you had the whole gamut from New York all the way through to LA. Texas was involved, Florida was involved real heavy, Chicago was involved. Um, like I said, Mississippi was involved. St. Louis, because St. Louis was involved too, because you had the St. Lunatics and all of them coming through. And I
Right.
remember I used to see um, those cats used to come through to Jermaine's studio, because Jermaine and I were cool. Before I actually moved to Atlanta, I would spend time with him and his mom. And or I would stay with them well into before Chris Cross even got signed.
Hmm.
And so those are pivotal moments. Um, I guess that's about five, right, or six. But the one of the biggest pivotal moments that I saw in that time frame is when Outkast came out. Um, when Outkast came out, Georgia saw that they could be whatever they wanted to be. They could be creative. They could do whatever they wanted to do. They could style themselves in their own fashions. didn't have to follow New York. They didn't have to follow anybody, because before that, JD kind of reminded me very much of New York, even though he was boasting Atlanta. It just reminded me of New York flow.
Right.
They were really going after that. And when you looked at even Crisscross, it was kind of thuggish. You know what I'm saying? It reminded you more of New York than it would be of what the South would become.
Gotcha.
Because because Texas is a very big mark too. Houston and Dallas, very big mark for Houston. Man, when did I'm trying to think, when did Michael 5000 Watts and
Swisher House?
Well, Swisher House, they were around, because even before, let me back up, because Jay Prince was still around too, and he was around 80s too. He was late 80s, early 90s. He was there. And if I'm not mistaken, Ghetto Boys, late 80s, had started putting out music too. They started putting out music too. So let me not get lost into the groups, but those eras are fine. After Outkast, you started seeing a really heavy shift, because after Outkast, Atlanta became, and I'm not saying it was because of Outkast. I'm thinking it was more so because So Def had already made a mark here. But when LaFace came out and showed the world that you can be creative and fresh and make really dope music in your own style and fashion, Atlanta became the new Mecca. And it's been that way ever since. Think about that. It's been since that era. What's changed except the artists have changed? Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of people here will say, "Oh, Atlanta's falling off." I don't see that. I mean, except they're throwing some cats in jail. But for hip hop, I hate to say it, that makes them even more popular. It makes them sell more records. It makes them, like, Young Thug is probably talked about more now than ever.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so what's happening now, I really like it, to be honest with you. I love the transition. I don't necessarily agree with everything that's said, but I never did, though. I mean, in any era, there's always been some clown shit. Always.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's okay. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I think we shun the fact that this is still entertainment, and it's supposed to be creative and fun, and it's supposed to be, imaginative, and everything that comes out of a black man's mouth has got to be reality, and that's some bullshit. That's some bullshit. We know that that's not true. I mean, and I hate the fact that we get that stigma. It's almost like we almost have to be steadfast and unmovable all the time, but yet we get kicked in the nuts all the time for the dumbest of shit.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm hoping I'm not getting off the beaten path.
No.
Those are some good time frames.